So the first commercial studio opened in Sydney in December 1842 by G.B. Goodman. This is not long after photography itself was announced in 1839 by Daguerre. But the 1840s in the colony of New South Wales was a time of depression. So the first photographers came to Sydney, but they only set up for short amounts of time. So when we look at this Daguerreotype portrait here, this is taken by the travelling photographer J.W. Newland, and it dates to 1848. Daguerreotypes were the first commercial portraits that people could buy, and as you can see by looking in, it's a highly mirrored surface, yet it holds a whole lot of detail.
Who's the portrait of?
So this is actually a portrait of Edward MacDonald, who was a publican in a hotel in the Rocks. This actually is quite significant in our collection because it's one of the few surviving photographic portraits from the 1840s. So while photographic portraits were the bread and butter business of commercial studios, there was also a market in landscape views. Before postcards, which came in the very beginning of the 20th century, if you wanted a view of the town you lived in, the natural scenery, the Blue Mountains, Jenolan Caves around Sydney, you had to buy a print. So there were certain photographers who specialised in landscape photography, and one of those, whose photograph here we're looking at, was Chau's Bayless.
So this is an unusual image because it's got two lighthouses. So what's the story behind that?
So Julie, everyone's familiar with the Macquarie Lighthouse that currently stands at South Head, but what you have here is the predecessor. So you have the old and new Macquarie lighthouses. So Julie, what I'm going to show you now is actually the reverse side of a photograph, and I'll explain why I find it quite fascinating.
Oh, that sounds intriguing, fantastic.
What we're looking at here is actually the reverse size of a photograph, and it's one of my favourites, although they're all favourites, is the card of H. Goods, Henry Goods, artist photographer who worked in Mudgee. So he was in Mudgee from about the mid-1860s to the 1880s. But what I really find interesting here is that he has printed this saying along the top, which is, "Secure the shadow ere the substance fade." So commercial photographers, while they may not have, many have printed this on their cards, in their advertising, this was quite a common phrase. The origins of the phrase are not really known. There's a hint of Shakespeare. People like to think it was Shakespearean, but it's not. But the audience understood it. What it is life is fleeting, life is brief. You want to hand on a photograph to your descendants or family, think of having your photograph taken.